The nurse Lucy Letby will continue to give evidence today on the case of child F. Benjamin Myers Casey, on behalf of Letby's defence, tells the court, child F had low blood glucose levels throughout the day on August 5, 2015, and had a blood test which, when analysed, showed child F had returned a very high insulin measurement of 4,657, also a very low C-peptide level of less than 169. A chart is shown for child F's blood glucose readings on August 5th, which were 0.8 at 1:54 am and remained low throughout the day, the highest being 2.9 at 5 am, but most readings were below 2. A neonatal nutrition prescription chart is shown to the court, which shows Lucy Letby signed for a lipid infusion on August 1st, the infusion starting at 12:20 am on August 2nd. Lucy Letby tells the court it lasted just under 24 hours, being taken down at 12:10 am on August 3rd. There was already a TPN bag in place on August 2nd, the court hears, as shown by the chart. It was a continuing 48-hour bag. Midnight was around the time which fluids were changed. Letby has signed for a TPN bag on August 3rd with a co-signer. The new bag is on the chart beginning at 12:10 am. TPN bags last 48 hours and lipid infusions last 24. A further sheet is shown for August 3rd to 4th, 2015. The continuing 48-hour bag is signed for but is not a new TPN bag, the court is told. That bag was discontinued at 12:25 am on August 5th. The chart shows a crossed out prescription for August 5th for a TPN bag where there is no lipid infusion. Letby tells the court child F had been on milk. Something changed with those requirements and the second prescription was made for a TPN bag with lipids to be administered. The new TPN bag was hung up at 12:25 am on August 5th. The bag was the same, the lipid requirements had changed, which meant a new prescription was written up. 2 nurses were involved in hanging up the new TPN bag, the court hears. Letby is one of the 2 nurses who signed for it. 2 nurses, neither of them Letby, are involved in the new lipid infusion. Mr. Myers asks if there is anything Letby did which accounted for child F's drop in blood sugar at that point. Letby replies, no. A prescription chart is shown to the court, showing child F received a 3 ml 10% dextrose bolus at 2:05 am. Child F's blood sugar had risen by 2:55 am, the court hears. Another 3 ml 10% dextrose bolus is given at 4:20 am, and child F's blood sugar level rose. Mr. Myers says Letby's night shift would have ended as usual. A chart is shown for a new TPN bag and lipid infusion for child F at noon on August 5th, which Letby confirms would have been after her shift ended. The TPN bag was hung up and a new long line was inserted as it had been tissuing. Letby says if tissuing happens, it is standard practice to stop the administration, discard everything and start again with a new bag, as the TPN bag would have been sterile. Mr. Myers says even after that, child F's blood sugar levels remained low throughout the day. Mr. Myers says this is not the same TPN bag Letby had hung up just after midnight, and Letby confirms this. Mr. Myers asks why Letby searched for the mother of child E and F 9 times on Facebook between August 2015 and August 2016, and the father on 1 occasion. Letby replies, searching people on Facebook is something I would do. Searching for child E and F's mum would be when she was on my mind. That was a normal pattern of behaviour for me. Asked why Letby had taken a picture of a thank you card written by the family of child E and F, Letby replies, it was something I wanted to remember. I quite often take photos of cards I receive. Letby said she took a photo of the card at 3:40 am one morning in the nursing station while she was at work. She says there was nothing unusual about that. Mr. Myers now turns to the case of child G, a baby girl born on May 31st, 2015 at 23 weeks plus 6 days gestation, weighing 1 pound 2 ounces at Arrow Park. The court hears child G was cared for in the early part of her life at Arrow Park before being transferred to the Countess on August 13th. The events are on September 7th, 2015, involving child G projectile vomiting and having a desaturation. She was transferred to Arrow Park between September 8th to 16th, returning to the Countess. 2 projectile vomits, a self-resolving apnea and a desaturation for child G take place on September the 21st. The second instance, a desaturation, also took place on the same day. Lucy Letby says she was called for help in this incident. Child G's monitor was off. Letby says she recalls child G at the time. She said, quote, "She stood out as a baby who had complex needs and was a very premature baby. We all got to know child G and her family quite well." She says she would have cared for child G many times during her time at the Countess of Chester Hospital. A shift rota for September 6th to 7th is shown. Lucy Letby was the designated nurse for a baby in room 1. Child G was in room 2 being looked after by another nurse. Letby says she was in room 1 with colleague Elsa Simpson shortly before child G vomited. She said, quote, "My memory is Elsa and myself were sat at the nursing station. We had been there for a few minutes. We heard child G's monitor alarm going off and heard a retching sound. We both immediately went in there and found child G vomiting and struggling to breathe. No one else was in the nursery room," Letby tells the court. Nursing notes by the designated nurse for child G, written retrospectively, are shown to the court. They include, quote, "Abdomen full but soft with no discoloration, aspirates minimal, partially digested milk, short period of straining uncomfortable at start of night when having cuddles with dad. Lucy Letby taken over care following vomit apneic episode at 0200. A feeding chart is shown for 45 ml of breast milk at 2 a.m. via the nasogastric tube. An acidity test showed pH 4 for child G. Mr. Myers asks if the chart showed the stomach had been aspirated prior to the feed. Letby replies, no. Lucy Letby's notes for 2 a.m. onwards state, child G had large projectile milky vomits at 2:15, continued to vomit, 45 ml of milk obtained from NG tube with air. Abdomen noted to be distended and discoloured. Colour improved a few minutes after aspirating tube, remained distended but soft. Letby says she has no memory of and had not been asked to do the caring for child G prior to this incident. A nursing duties chart for the neonatal unit on September the 7th is shown to the court. Letby's first entries are recorded at 2 a.m, carrying out observations and giving a feed for the room 1 designated baby. A process which would take a matter of minutes, Letby tells the court. She says she was then with Ayla Simpson for a few minutes. The court hears at 2 a.m, Letby's nursing colleague had administered the feed for child G as recorded in her nursing note. Quote, "Nurse L. Letby taken over care following vomit apneic episode after 2 a.m. feed." At the time of the event, child G was seen vomiting from her mouth and nose and struggling to breathe. Letby says she observed this on her arrival. Child G's abdomen was quite firm and distended and red. Letby says room 2 would always have lighting on as a high dependency unit needed to have lights on to be safe to observe babies. She said, quote, "We were both quite shocked. We could see vomit on the chair and on the floor. We were both quite shocked by that." Letby adds that babies don't vomit like that and it wasn't something she had seen before. A crash call was put out. Letby says the vomit on September the 21st was a forceful vomit, but not as significant as the one on September 7th. Letby tells the court child G needed further breathing support and child G was intubated later that morning. Letby says she recalled child G had further desaturations and required intubation, but the problems with oxygen saturation continued. She says she confirmed giving care to child G. She improved after being reintubated. Mr. Myers asks Letby about the September 21st events for child G. The first is around 10 a.m, the second after 3:15 p.m. For that day shift, the court is shown the rota, and Lucy Letby was the designated nurse for child G that day in room 4, along with 2 other babies. 2 of the 3 members of the management team were on an office-based day, the court hears. Lucy Letby was also responsible for a 4th baby rooming in with parents, which was, the court hears, a baby staying in on-site accommodation with their parents as the family prepared to go home. Letby said she would periodically be going to that accommodation to check things were okay and answer any questions parents may have. Letby's notes for that day are shown to the court. They include, quote, At 10:15, 2 large projectile milky vomits, brief self-resolving apnea and desaturation to 35% with colour loss. NG tube aspirated, 30 ml undigested milk discarded, abdomen distended, soft. Doctors asked to review. Temperature remains low. Tachycardic, 18 beats per minute since vomit. Mum states that child G does not appear as well as she did yesterday. The court is shown a feeding chart for child G. A 40 ml feed of expressed breast milk was given at 9:15 am, signed by Letby. After the feed, there were 2 projectile milky vomits, Letby noted. Child G also had a large bowel motion. Letby says she would have tested the stomach pH level prior to a feed, but would not have aspirated the contents. She says that would not have been needed as child G was a 40-week baby and would be treated as a full-term baby by this stage. Mr. Myers asks if it would be known how much milk would be in a baby's stomach. Letby says she would not, as there would only be an aspiration to check for the pH levels. This projectile vomit did not leave the cot space, Letby tells the court. She says that would have amounted to 10 mils. Letby says she cannot be sure, but believes child G's mother would have been present at the time. Letby says she, herself, would have been in the room but not at the cot side of child G when the vomit happened, and would have been alerted to it by the monitor going off. She says child G stabilised after that. Letby said she asked if child G could be seen sooner than usual on the ward round, as room 4 would normally be the last to be seen. Letby says there was no large-scale medical response to the incident. Letby explains care was transferred to another nurse as it was identified child G required a higher level of care, and Letby was already looking after 3 babies that day. The court hears evidence about the second incident on September 21st. Letby says parents would be allowed in on the units around 3 p.m. that day. Letby says for this incident she remembers being conscious there were other parents in the room. Screens were put up as normal practice for privacy as child G was having cannulation following her event. The note records, quote, numerous failed attempts then at cannulation finally inserted by Dr. Gibbs, without fluid for 6 hours as nil by mouth. Blood sugars were stable throughout. Further significant apnea Brady desat following cannulation requiring neopuff and 100% oxygen. Help summoned. Letby says she discovered the desaturation and called for help. She said child G had been behind the screen for some time and had been looking after her other designated babies. She says she was aware the cannulation process took some time but was not present to see it taking place as it was behind the screens. A long line chart is shown to the court, which noted the cannula was inserted at the 7th attempt. Letby said she cannot recall why she went in, but saw behind the screen that she was alone. She was dusky and blue and was not breathing. The monitor was not on. Letby says child G was on the procedure trolley used for procedures such as cannulation. Letby says the baby should not have been left alone on the trolley like that. She says she picked up child G and put her back in her cot, applied neopuff and called for help. Letby says she did not know why the monitor was off. The nurse colleague, quote, froze and got someone else to help. Another nurse, Caroline Bennion, came in. Letby said she was very concerned about 3 issues: a baby being unattended on a procedure trolley, alone behind screens, and with a monitor switched off. Letby said she raised those concerns with a nursing colleague and was keen to file a DATIX report. The nursing colleague was less keen, Letby says, to raise the issue as the procedure had been carried out by Dr. Gibbs. Letby said she took assurances that issues would have been dealt with as discussed. Lucy Letby confirms she continued to care for child G after that day. The case now moves to child H, a baby girl born on September 22nd, 2015, weighing 2.33 kilograms. The court hears child H did not receive surfactant, a protein which helps the lungs, until 41 hours after her birth. Child H required 3 chest drains and had a number of desaturations in her first few days. At 3:22 am on September 26th, child H had a profound desaturation to 30%. The following morning, child H had another desaturation to the 40s at 12:55 am on September 27th. Letby tells the court she remembers child H and her care needs, but not specific details without referring to the notes. She says for September 2015, the unit was busy at the time. A message from Letby on September the 24th referred to staffing levels on the unit as being completely unsafe, the court is told. In a message to another colleague, Sophie Ellis, Letby says, quote, "Oh, Soph, it was pretty bad. 18 babies intubating on handover and a baby with a sugar of 0.1! Letby tells the court the capacity was 16 on the unit. Mr. Myers says, had the unit always been this busy? No, Letby replies. Letby said it had been getting increasingly busier. She adds she had never seen a baby with chest drains at the Countess until child H. She adds she had never seen a baby with 3 chest drains even at a tertiary centre. The most I had seen was 2. Letby said during this time, doctors had to, quote, look things up and discussions were held on how to manage the chest drains. She says from her experience, chest drains were sutured into the skin so they didn't move. Very few chest drains were kept on the unit. Arrow Park couriered out some drains, Letby tells the court. A nursing handover sheet for September 23, 2015 recovered from Letby's home in the Morrison's bag is shown to the court. Letby is asked why she had that sheet and 4 others with child H on it. She replied, "It has just come back with me inadvertently and was left at home. They have not been taken out of my pocket at the end of the shift and I may have taken them home." Mr. Myers says, "Did you mean to take them home?" Letby replies, "No." Letby adds she did not know she had that many handover sheets at her house. Quote, "I did not keep track of them." The nursing notes by Letby for September 25th to 26th are shown to the court. They include, quote, 2 chest drains in situ at start of shift, intermittently swinging, serous fluid accumulating. 23:30 bradycardia and desaturation requiring neopuff in 100% to recover. 10 ml air aspirated from chest drain, following poor blood gas and 100% oxygen requirement. Consultant Gibbs attended the unit and inserted a 3rd chest drain, all 3 drains swinging. Child H desaturating on handling, minimal handling observed when possible. At 3:22, profound desaturation and colour loss to 30%, good chest movement and air entry, colour change on CO2 detector, neopuff commenced, serous fluid from all 3 drains. Became bradycardiac, doctors crash called and resus commenced. Letby is asked about the chest drains swinging. She says that shows they are working, with fluid moving back and forth the drain as needed. Serous fluid is naturally occurring fluid in the body. For September 25th to 26th, child H was the only baby in room 1 and Letby was a designated nurse that night. She required 2 nurses on a high level of care and Letby had a colleague to assist her with the drugs for child H and maintenance of the chest drains. Letby refers to a note, quote, "At 0200 blood transfusion completed," saying the timing of that is an error and should be 3 a.m. A blood transfusion chart shows the transfusion started at 3 p.m. on September 25th and ended at 3:05 a.m. on September 26th. The note is co-signed by Letby. A separate chart with Letby's handwriting shows, quote, "chest drain 0210 and a bolus 0250. The blood complete is sometime after 3 a.m. prior to 3:24 a.m, Letby tells the court. Letby says the 2 a.m. note error she made was nothing sinister and just a mistake, and other accessible notes showed the timing the blood transfusion for child H stopped at 3 a.m. A message from Yvonne Griffiths, part of the management team to Letby, is shown to the court, in which she commends Letby for her hard work over the previous shifts. The message is on September 26th. She adds, quote, "You composed yourself very well during a stressful situation, and it was good to see her confidence grow." Letby relayed that message to a colleague. Letby said this message exchange had followed a disagreement over baptism for child H. Yvonne Griffiths had felt it was, quote, "not appropriate for that time of night, as child H had stabilised at that point and the shift was busy." Further messages between Letby and her colleague are exchanged. Letby says, for context, she was, quote, "choosing not to have child H due to lack of appropriate support, as she wanted extra staff to assist her in the care of child H, as child H had several chest drains for which she had not been familiar with. Letby's response to Yvonne Griffiths: "Thank you, that's really nice to hear. As I gather you are aware of some of the not so positive comments that have been made recently regarding my role, which I have found quite upsetting. Our job is a pleasure to do and just hope I do my best for the babies and their family." Letby tells the court there had been frustration about comments made by colleagues that Letby and another nurse were being allocated room 1 shifts on the rotas, and there was frustration about the unit being busy.